Helps if I turn my microphone on. At least I caught this towards the very beginning. Okay. Let's try that one more time. So, I thought I would schedule live, even though I'm running a little bit late. It should be some sound now. I caught that pretty quick. I jumped on over. Hey, Jay. So I want to try to schedule lives on occasion. I thought it might be fun to talk about topics that you're interested in. So I want to continue to make shorts. I actually finally had a short go decent, had about 1,700 views. Yay! Some of my older content's not getting a lot of views, so I don't know if those are topics people want to talk about, or maybe they're just not finding my videos. I do know I took about a 2-year break from making videos regularly. I do want to try to get back to doing that, but because I'm streaming games and doing other stuff as well, it's difficult to find time. So I thought it might be kind of cool to raise some topics. So if you haven't seen it, on the community tab of my page here, which I'm trying to post on every so often, I posted 4 topics. And it okay, now it looks like there's a tie. So the 4 topics that I posted was: further look into cultural traditions versus religion, discussion of a story in the Mabinogion, is it moral to raise your child pagan or with religion, which is the topic of this live, and then warding, shielding, and spiritual protection. And then I left a category for other for below. It looks like 33% of the voters tied with is it moral to raise your child pagan and warding and shielding. So maybe warding and shielding will be next week's live topic. So the reason, and hello the Dusty Dead, welcome. And hey Jay Woodwolf. So the reason I want to try to do these in advance so folks can prepare. The topic of raising children is always a very sensitive topic, regardless of how. Are you raising them with morals or with religion? What should you introduce your child to? Like, how young is too young to introduce them to firearms or to watch R-rated movies or to start dating? Do you want to introduce them to concepts and ideologies like identity politics or politics itself? There are so many things when it comes to children. The issue is, when it comes to raising children, it's a personal choice. I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to the parent. And the only time that people really step in is if there is a harm potential for that child. Religion is a sensitive topic because some people believe that religion is harmful because spiritually it's harmful if you don't raise the child right. So I thought that would be a cool topic to discuss. Religion in general, but specifically with a lot of the individuals that like to watch my lives, paganism, general paganism. As a parent, individuals will try to do what's best for their child, I think. You're always going to have exceptions. You're going to have deadbeat parents that have no care, people who give their child away. Whether it was a hard choice or not, people will give their children away for adoption sometimes or neglect them. An active parent who wants to raise their child and give them the best start possible will try to introduce to them morals. Now, morals sometimes get intertwined with religion. There is a lot of Abrahamic faiths that have doctrines associated with how you should act as a human being. And a lot of people have you believe that morals are Christian. Like, they'll say that as a Western society and culture, the United States is based off of Christian morals. I don't know if I fully agree with that. And the reason I say that is, like, even though, yes, the system that we live in America is built upon Abrahamic faith, morals are not unique to Abrahamic faith. You have morals and how to act as a good person throughout multitude of different types of cultures and spiritualities, and you can be atheist and still be spiritual. And you can be atheist and not spiritual and still have morals. There's a conversation I once heard, and there's I can't remember the guy's name. I used to love his videos until I found out he was specifically preaching. The reason it threw me off when he was preaching is he was very logical in many of the approaches he comes up with and the way that he analyzes stuff until he brings God into it. And then it's specifically like, this is the only way, and how could you think otherwise? And one of the arguments this individual brought up was, what keeps you from doing morally right things? You follow what God tells you. Like, if you're not following God's way, then you're not following morals. And I'm like, wait a minute. And without the existence of God, there is no morality and there's no reason to be moral. And I don't agree with that. there is a comedy skit that had a similar topic where a woman was saying to a guy, it's like, oh, well, how can you not believe in God? It's like, without God, people would rape and murder as much as they want to. And the guy replied, I do rape and murder as much as I want to. And she's like, what? He's like, I do, as in to say not at all, as in I don't want to do that. So even though that individual didn't believe in God, I don't know if he was atheist or not. It was like a comedy skit thing from a TV show. But he was bringing up the fact that you do have the ability to do what you want. And just because you don't believe in a deity, and even if a deity didn't exist of any type for any religion, doesn't mean that you can't be moral with it. So when there's so much question out there as to what exists, what is religion, what is the universe, what is life, what is existence, what created us, we do guesswork when we find religion or even spirituality. And I will argue that with anyone, even an individual like myself who has a very distinct and defined spirituality. My spirituality is like a glass of water. It can shift and take shape and be poured into another container. It's unsubstantial, and it's only going to have definition based upon the container I'm currently carrying it in. If I add some flavoring to it, it turns it to tea or coffee or whatever the case may be. It's going to change and shift. It's not a stone like some people's religion is. They chisel it out of stone and it has to be their religion. And if you chip at it, you're going to ruin their image, their statue they made, and they get real mad. Some people have it like clay, to where they're willing to manipulate it a little bit, but it's still clay. Mine's like water, and it can change shape, it can freeze, it can steam. I am constantly shifting my view, and I don't have a definitive path other than my own. That's not the case for everyone. So people who are real hardcore in any religion, but specifically let's talk about pagans right now, because neo-paganism is a very popular topic. So if you're raising your child and you're doing the best you can to give them the best start in life, you want to teach them morality and morals, and you want to teach them how the world works. So in theory, it would make sense to introduce them at the very least to your religion, right? Shouldn't you raise them and teach them that what you believe is the right way to believe? Does that make sense? Or are you brainwashing that child by enforcing your view of reality? In the case of a Christian upbringing, right? And it's past and it's in societal, and everyone's Christian. It's just accepted. That's just what you do. I've heard people outside of Christianity say that's indoctrination. People inside of Christianity say it's wrong not to raise your child as a Christian. Some people think that you should let the child choose for themselves when they get older. But even if you go the route of letting them choose when they get older, how do you raise them to begin with? What if they ask questions? Why are we doing this holiday or this celebration? Why does this happen? Why do we exist? What if they ask questions that are those deep questions that you yourself answer through your spirituality? Should that then be pushed and shared with your child? So I've been married before. This is my second marriage I'm on. And God's be willing, it's the last one I ever have. But because I love my wife to death, very supportive and incredibly intelligent woman. But my last marriage, 2 children, and we raised them with spirituality, but not religion. Because at the time, I was seeking out spirituality. I was looking for something. And at the time, she was a Wiccan at the time. So we had a lot of conversations about spirituality and stuff. So we raised the children to go to their grandparents' house, and they would get to do the Christian celebrations, but we just called it, if you call it Christmas, fine. We weren't doing anything religious with it, but you can see what they do. You can share in what culture other people do. And we were showing them the Wheel of the Year at the time. That's what we focused on. So we went with the traditional Wheel of the Year that people associate with Wicca and paganism. So we introduced them to both. But I would have regular conversations. He's now, in March, he'll be 24. And he has a son too. And to this day, he is very analytical, and he doesn't really have spirituality at all. He's kind of like, I don't know. He's kind of just, it is what it is. And he does his own thing. His mother, after we got divorced, she actually became a Jehovah's Witness and tried to raise them as Jehovah's Witnesses, which then gets into the other part. So if your religion changes, How do you do that to your child? Raise them one way and then flip it and then raise them another way. So if you change your denomination, do you then enforce it on your child? So that's where this conversation, I think, is a good point. Is teaching them what you currently believe the right thing to do? Or do you introduce it to them and let them decide? Let's get some comments. What do you all think that are watching right now? So Dave Early said, but does anyone, even pagans, have any right to make a judgment that someone is immoral because they're raising their child in a specific path and not giving them a choice? We disagree with it, but to call it immoral is not correct syntax for this context, I believe. If it isn't a question of morality, is what I'm saying. I think that's a very solid point, Dave. And I think that's why I specifically worded it this way, because some people do make that judgment. And I've heard other people specifically say it is immoral to not raise them Christian, as an example. If you do anything else, you have to raise them this way because this is the right way. And I've not heard this amongst New Age folks. No, actually, I have. Not specifically wording it as immoral, but I have heard individuals say that they are brainwashing and indoctrinating. And to me, that almost feels as bad as saying, well, it's immoral to raise your child that way. It's still, regardless of the turn of phrase and how you want to word it, telling someone they shouldn't raise their child a certain way is what it comes down to. Is it moral, specifically bringing that up? I think I was aiming at the idea of having a conversation around morality. And sounds like you're saying that you don't think it's immoral or moral to make the choice. It's up to the individual, and you can agree or disagree with that raising, if I'm understanding what you're saying. And I would agree with you there personally. Hey, Rookie. Hey, it's Rookie. I'm new. Blaze the Book, Yahweh and the Gods and Goddesses of Canon by John Day is a good book on pagan origin of Judaism. It was recommended to me by a Bible history scholar. Good book. I'll have to check that out. I never heard of that one. Yahweh and the Gods and Goddesses of Canon. Interesting. And the Gods, Goddesses of Canon. It's got this gospelcoalition.org thing that pops up in the search results. I wonder if there is a internet archive version of it. Researchgate.com, archive.org. So there might even be a archive version of it. Like, I don't even know if you're supposed to access no, you have to borrow it. So you can borrow it through internetarchive.org. That's interesting. So this was written in 1968. Let's see here. I think I can switch. Yeah. So this book was written in 1968. And you can see up here, you have to log in to borrow it. I'm not logged into an account right now for Internet Archive. Yahweh and the Gods of Canon. Canon? Is it Canon or Canon? I don't know. The historical analysis of two contrasting faiths by William Foxwell Albright. This volume contains the lectures under Louis H. Jordan Bequest, delivered in May 1965 at the School of Oriental and African Studies in the University of London. The original series consisted of 7 lectures entitled Canon, Phonica, and Israel. And an historical, I think it's supposed to be a historical analysis of two contrasting faiths. The first 3 lectures appear as chapter 1 and 3 with the same headings, but the 4 remaining lectures have been comprised into 2 chapters with new headings. The title of the published volume is taken from the heading of chapter 4. Interesting. Yeah, now that would definitely be an interesting read for sure. Yeah, so 1968. Thanks for sharing. Oops. The first A is long, as in Canaan, I guess, maybe closer. Dave retracted message. Okay. All right. If I misunderstood what you said, please by all means clarify. But yeah, what do you think? Should you raise your child in your faith? What are your thoughts individually? My personal opinion, no problem. Yeah. My personal opinion is I think that it makes sense to raise your child with your faith with stipulations. I don't think that children should participate in ceremony or ritual or be initiated in any religion. But I believe that they should be introduced to what their parents believe. Because if you believe that, why wouldn't you share that with them? Right? It's guided you for some reason, way, shape, or form. So sharing that with them and introducing to them to that, I think makes sense. But once they're of a older age, I personally am of the idea that it's a good idea to allow them to discover things for themselves. My personal opinion is I would have no problem with a child growing up, switching faiths, but then having a daily conversation about it. Like, why do you believe that? What did you learn, and why does it make sense or why does it not make sense? Keep them critically thinking and analyzing so that they can make an informed decision versus doing this because mom and dad said so, or doing this because someone else said so. That's the problem I have with religion as a whole. I don't think people should just do it because it's expected or told to them that this is the only way. But that's my opinion. Not until they're old enough to understand the meaning of the ritual. Yes, completely agree with you there, Dave. Canaan is the land of Canaan. Canaan is the land of Canaan? Okay. I figured. I figured it was referring to a specific place. I'd be interested in reading about that because I had read several instances where individuals are speaking about how Yahweh was from a particular region that also had a goddess. And both of them were honored. And it wasn't until later that they removed the goddess from that area. And I believe it was somewhere over there in the Middle East. I don't know the exact region. But I did watch a YouTube documentary on it once where an individual was speaking about it. I think Religion for Breakfast might have mentioned something about it. And I know someone else did as well. Religion for Breakfast has got a really cool channel. I originally was aspiring to have a channel similar to that, having deep theological conversations like that on different paths and spiritual workings, but much better researched and much better editing on his channel. So hopefully one day I can get to that level, but right now I am not there. even after all the years of attempting to. So, but that's okay. We still like what I have to offer. Otherwise we wouldn't be here, right? Anyone else want to share their thoughts on raising your child with a religion, if you should or you should not? I want to give folks a chance to participate in the conversation and use my back scratcher. And then if not, I'll continue on with other ramblings and thoughts when it comes to spirituality and children. Yeah, I like Religion for Breakfast channel also. Yeah, good stuff. Hey, Grassland G. My kids know of my beliefs and know that different people believe different things. I like that too. You and Dave both, I think you have a very good path there. I like that. It makes sense to me personally. Not that I have to approve of your path. I'm just letting you know and giving my 2 cents because, well, I mean, you're here to talk to me, right? or learn from me or listen to me. I don't know. Maybe all of the above. Who knows? That makes sense to me, though. One thing I also think that is kind of interesting that when people are raised with a particular faith or religion, and I'm thinking back to even my own upbringing. I was raised as Roman Catholic because my father was Roman Catholic. And my mom, well, my mom gave me the freedom to make my own decisions. Part of my parents' divorce was the agreement to continue to raise me as a Roman Catholic as well as my brothers. So we attended church school on Sundays. We called it Sunday school. So we would go and learn about our religion through church. And as I got older, I had a lot of questions. And the church basically said a lot of things to me like, well, you know, when I brought up spiritual healing, and I've said this in other videos before, when I brought up spiritual healing, when I was getting into etheric touch naturally through my own exploration and research, they said, if you're not healing in Jesus' name, you're using the devil's power. And I was like, bullshit. So I started looking elsewhere. So my mom, awesome, encouraged me to explore and look at other stuff and bought me my first spell book, which I still have. It was Scott Cunningham's Earth, Air, Fire, and Water, and brought me to psychic conventions, etc., so that I could explore and research things on my own. Now it's funny because she drives me nuts when I first started getting into this stuff. And I started researching in the 90s, like 95 or so. But when I actually found polytheism, paganism, I would say it was probably about 2000 or 99, somewhere in there. And it was when I met Mac's wife, because she was Wiccan and she introduced me to it. And when I was talking to her and started researching and getting all these Llewellyn books and stuff like that, we're having conversations. My mom said to me, she's like, "Oh, that religion you make up as you go along." Pissed me off. Like, no, you don't understand. Because I had Ed Fitch's Grimoire of Shadows, which I still have over here. And I was so set that, oh, but it's written down, so we have to know what this is. We know where it comes from, and this is something rediscovered. We reconnect with the ancient roots. So I was very focused. But she was right. As I've learned and grown up, it is what you make up as you go along. And there's a different way of phrasing that, because it sounds offensive when you follow a spiritual polytheistic path. Oh, you make it up as you go along. It's you research and you connect with what you want to connect with, and you add in pieces. It's being eclectic, basically, where you're taking pieces that make sense and you're discarding ones that do not. So you build based upon the remnants that are available to you. So not necessarily making it up as you go along, but you're making your own path as you go along. In essence, I think what she was saying is true and right, even if it was worded harshly. But being raised and told a specific way to think as a child, it was easy and convenient to just listen to what your parents told you and what your church told you. It was real easy. It was almost peaceful, because you had this mindless, blind devotion you could do, right? You had the answers given to you. Someone else had all the answers. It wasn't until I got older that I realized they didn't all have the answers. My dad actually started researching other religions later in life as well. He even joined the Freemasons. Not that Freemasons is a religious organization, but definitely some interesting takes on some of the things that the Freemasons did and believed in. But as he started researching and he got into out-of-body experience and all sorts of stuff, he still, as I was growing up, instilled on me to think, like, I think when I first mentioned witchcraft, because I was starting to hear about it and be interested in it, I think he said something along the lines that was evil and don't get involved with that. I'm like, well, you don't know what you're talking about, because, as a child, we know everything. That's just how it is. When we're growing up, we have all the answers. So it seemed like my father had the belief of, I'm going to raise you in what I was raised with, but he still was willing to explore and look elsewhere. He was willing to open his mind. My mom was very much of, just find what works for you and just look out there. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Nobody really knows. And I think the way she thinks of it has really rubbed off on me over the years. And I think a lot of the research and openness I have today stems from my mother. As for teaching morality, I refuse to teach that some deity will get them for misbehaving. Reciprocity is different, however. Fair. That's kind of a good point. And I wonder, and like I said, I think that's an argument for a lot of people. They think that without the fear of a deity punishing you, how can you have morals yourself, right? How do you know what right from wrong? I believe that we all have an inner voice. And I think some people's inner voice hears things differently, because clearly there are some people that I genuinely believe are just born to, they don't care. They don't have the faculties, the natural innate ability to say, this is wrong, this is causing harm, I shouldn't do it, and actually feel joy in hurting and harming others. I think there really are people born that way. I don't think they become that way, they just are. Some of them might fight it and keep it down, but some of them do not. Sociopaths, psychopaths, like it's something, I don't know if it's genetic or chemical or what, but I think there's people that are just born bad. You could still teach them how to act in society, though. And I think it's sad to me that a lot of people use that their fear of God and punishment for eternal damnation or something along those lines to make them want to be a decent person. And considering how many people have become atheists today, I think polytheism on a whole, I don't think it's that prevalent. I don't think it's as prevalent as people believe it is. But the ones that are polytheistic and believe in multiple gods and deities, I haven't really observed any of them being terrible. Like, sure, some of them are judgmental, especially people who freshly get into it. Like, if people have been into it for a while and stick with it, I've noticed from my experiences where I live. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, when people would get into it, they would quickly jump into it, be book taught, self-initiated, all that kind of stuff. And they would weaponize it. They would argue and yell at others and wear huge pentagrams and flash their spell book around all over the place to anyone who would hear it. They would constantly say stuff like, oh my goddess, and like be really, really dramatic about it. Fluff bunnies is what we called them, because they were so full of fluff, there was no substance, and they cared more about the fluff than the substance. And they would use it to lecture other people and tell them how wrong they were with everything. And they would turn it into an argumentative thing. And I don't think that served any real purpose for the individual, nor the individuals that they were attacking with it. But a lot of those folks would eventually grow out of it. It was a phase for them. They stopped doing it after a while. You know, most of these people that were like that were high school kids. And then towards college, they would stop. I remember meeting adults that had given up, threw away their spell books and threw away all of their things for ritual because they got married. And in many cases, it was women, and they married a man who was not into any sort of spirituality or was Christian, so they got rid of all their stuff. And I remember talking to some of these individuals because they would still go to chat rooms and they would still go online to meet other people. And when they met individuals like myself or others, they're like, hey, I have to hide who I am now. Why? Well, because I found someone and they don't accept it. So, okay. But then every so often I will find a rare individual that never gave up practicing it. It wasn't a phase for. And they are immersed in the life. And those individuals, I have noticed, tend to be very peaceful and open-minded and either keep to themselves or have very low aggressive discussions. What I mean by low aggressiveness is dismissive to the idea of continuing to argue. They don't feel value in having the argument continue. So they don't. They say their piece. They say, we're not sure. It's the way I think about it. And they move on. I think, though, that for the most part, people need to make that decision for themselves. They have to decide, does it make sense to them? Is this the path they want to follow and move forward? Too many people rely on others to tell them answers. And that's, again, why it kind of reiterates the fact of what I'm saying is, I don't feel like it's wrong to want to give your child the best start you can in life, but I think you can teach how to be a decent person without shoving religion down someone's throat. I think part of it comes down to the parent too. Does that parent truly believe in their path? Or is it something that was just introduced to them? Right? So it's like, if you're just doing the path because it was introduced to you, how many people do you know that claim a religion, especially an Abrahamic religion, but don't practice? They're only that religion when it comes to arguments or if somebody asks them what their religion is. But aside from that, they're just themselves and they just do their own thing and they don't practice. Judgmental fluff bunnies often sound like the judgmental Christians they speak down upon. Projection, most do move past it, thankfully. Yes. 100% agree with you there. And that was one of the arguments that I've had with individuals who jump into paganism without knowing much about it. They jump in and then they weaponize it instantly and they have to fight off the world. They start doing the martyr complex of, oh, our people were persecuted. It's like, you literally just picked this up like a couple months ago. Stop. What do you mean our people? You were literally raised as a Christian. Stop. And again, they have such animosity and anger towards Christians for judging and attacking others, just like you're saying. I agree. And they're doing the same thing under a different banner. You're fighting the same war with a different flag. And it just, I never understood that. But you're right. They drop off later in life. People who stick with it, who stick with the path, or even if their path alters and evolves with time, they move past that. It's no longer about judging or attacking others. It's about finding something for yourself. There's people who practice and they practice for themselves, and there's people who practice to show off or to criticize others. I don't know. But what I was saying earlier with with children, specifically when they get to an adulthood, they don't really practice anymore. So what good did it do to introduce them to religion at that young of an age? Now, I do know that there are there's a lot more people, and I was having this conversation with my wife too. There's a lot more people who had parents that were raised 70s, 80s, 90s, where they're born 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they grew up to adulthood. So they were introduced when the big Wiccan boom was happening, the big witch boom of the 90s was happening. And they were starting to raise their children that way. So I think we are starting to see second and third generations individuals that were raised in some form of polytheism, but it doesn't always stick. People still step away from it. So even if it's the same thing with Christians, right? A lot of people who are polytheistic today were raised with Christians and they walked away from the way they were raised. People still walk away from it. I don't know. I don't think there's a 100% right answer, but that's why I thought it's a good topic, right? Think about it. If you have children, or if you're going to have children, or if you had children, does it make sense to raise them and say, this is what you believe? I mean, because that's basically what you're doing, right? When you raise a child, they're looking to you for all the answers. They have no idea. They're exploring the world still. And they're depending on you to teach them right from wrong. They're depending on you to teach them how to be a decent human being. So if you tell them from the get-go, this is exactly how it is. This is how the world exists. This is how we were created. This is what purpose in life is, and it's more than this mortal shell. I think there's ways of balancing that out and showing and expressing to those children how to at least be aware of it, like you're doing here, Grassland G. Like you mentioned, you did that with your children. You made them aware of it without shoving it down their throat. Yet you'll have other people who shoves it down their throat and the children grow up and move away from it, or in some cases they take it and run with it. I know a lot more Christians than I do pagans. It just seems like there's more prevalent. And in many cases, the ones that are raised to be hardcore have their children be as hardcore as they are. I know a Southern Baptist, and it is mandatory duty for all of them to go to church and do church activities together, and they are very active in the church. My aunt and my cousins, they know all sorts of things about Catholicism that even though I was raised as a Roman Catholic, I don't know anything about, or forgot it, but because they were regularly active and going and participating, and they do go to regular services, and they raise their children that way, so their kids are now being raised that way as well. And it's like, from an outside perspective, it might be like, oh, well, they're raising their child with morals and carrying on the family traditions and all that. And from someone who has the perspective of their path is the only right path, it would make sense. Because if this is the only way, why wouldn't you teach that to your children? Because this is the right way. This is the only way, right? But if you don't know and you're on the fence, I think that's where we start to see people take their children and not raise them with religion. If they're not fully bought in and they're not fully practicing, participating, and they're a religion in name only, then why teach that to your children when you're not even sure yourself? So I think the confidence of the parent is going to play a large factor on whether or not they should or should not. Is it moral? Is it moral to raise your child with religion? I think it's less of a question of whether or not it's pagan or a different religion. I think it's just religion, period, or spirituality, period. And I would almost call it immoral to force something on a child who's still discovering the world, versus helping to guide them and setting them up to think for themselves. See, then as soon as I start saying that, I keep thinking in my head, but if you would want to try to protect your child from spiritual harm, or if you want to try to protect your child from getting indoctrinated, does that mean you indoctrinate them first in something else? Is that the way you protect it? How do you protect and prepare your child? Or do you let them find out the hard way? Reverence for nature. Probably one thing I did force upon them. Right. But isn't that similar to forcing upon them how to act like a decent person? Revering life versus this is how you go about practicing revering life. I think there's a line, right? One is about how to live and how life is and how to respect what's there, one's respect and being a decent person, but another one is a set of beliefs of something we don't have fact behind, right? Religion is this blind faith. We take it for granted what people say or what we have experienced spiritually to believe. You know, telling your child you have to believe in God or you have to believe in Odin and Thor, like telling them this is where we come from, this is how we were created, and to truly have them believe that some magic guy pushed the earth together and made souls appear on the earth, or they slayed a giant and took its body and turned it into the mountains and his blood into the oceans, like, or any of the creation stories, and truly believing that. We don't know. We're taking that like because somebody else says that's the case. So do we want to do that same treatment to our child versus having reverence and respect for nature, respecting something, life itself, and knowing how we interact and how we consume and eat food and how what we do affects the environment and those around us and our, you know, our environment as our habitat, the people around us, the animals around us, and respecting nature means keeping this precious resource that has nurtured us versus saying what nature is. Nature is the mother goddess. Okay, well, maybe you don't believe in the mother goddess. Nature is God's creation, whatever the case may be, telling them that versus respecting it. I think there's a fine line there. And I think, in my opinion, what you're doing is more raising your child or your children to be conscious of their choices and decisions and the impact it has on others, raising them to be good people versus teaching them religion. But that's my 2 cents from listening to what you're saying, or reading, should I say, reading what you're saying. What other thoughts are out there? Should you raise your child with religion? Start having people jump in as you jump in. If you've been here for a while, cool. If you are just now joining us, or if you're watching this after in my live section on my YouTube channel, what do you think? Yep. What do you think? Is it good to raise your child as a pagan? Is it good to raise your child with a religion, period? Should you let them figure it out for themselves? How much guidance is too much guidance? When is parenting stepping into and either corrupting and brainwashing them, indoctrinating them, or opening their mind? Like how do you balance that? What do you do? What would you suggest to someone else, regardless of what choices you yourself made? Pausing for chat as we have dead silence. Dead air. This will be fun to watch later where people are like, oh, yeah, this is great. And all of a sudden, hello, is your microphone off? Okay, back to rambling. Anyway, so that was like my main thoughts, is as far as considering the parent, it's their choice. I get that. So people can do what they want to do. If you're trying to make the decision for yourself, just ask yourself, what are you trying to do for your children? Are you so sure of your path that you are never wrong? Ooh, we get comments. Cool. I think exposing them to different religions and discussing each one with them, then choose when they are older. Mel R., completely agree with you. I think you're the third person to suggest that, and I agree. I agree with that mindset 100%. I also like to think back to, like I said, when I was younger, what would I have preferred? I ended up getting that from my mom. Even later in life, my dad was on board with that too. I remember on my paternal grandma, so my dad's mom, on her deathbed, I told her that I wasn't Christian anymore because her side of the family, that was Roman Catholic. That's where that came from. And I told her that I found my own path. And she smiled and she said, you know, that is what's important. All that's important is that you believe in something. That was like, that will stick with me forever because of how impactful it was to hear my own grandmother say that. Now, granted, she was like super friendly and nice, and everyone felt warm and welcome at her home. She was basically, she's first generation American. Her sister and her parents came from Italy. So, but it was really cool to hear her say that and be so accepting. Yeah, I know. Christians being accepting, crazy, right? I think that's the thing I keep coming back, and that's why I agree with you, Mel, and Grassland, and Dave, is not being 100% sure myself. How could I want to have anyone, my children or anyone's children, start out life believing in something that I'm not even sure is true? And if it is that true, they'll come back to it on their own. I think it's fine. I just don't like when religions get so dogmatic and parents start shunning kids or taking stories so literal that it goes against science. Fair. And there's nothing wrong with that, Dusty Dead. So you think it's okay to raise them with religion, just not push it so dogmatically that they're shunning for not accepting that path. You know, I have seen that before. I was very fortunate with my parents that neither of them shunned me for making different choices. My family didn't either. They just rolled their eyes and like, oh, he's just being him again. But they never shunned me for it. And that's the important thing, is I have seen people disown their kids over it. I think that's where a lot of animosity comes from for Christians, is I've seen, it, to me at least, it seemed more common. I don't know. I've seen a lot of Christians do it, but I'm sure that a lot of the polytheists that raised their children pagan, if their children were to become Christian, some of them might do it too. I have learned that parenting is intuitive, just like the rest of my path. Parenting via religion is safer. There's a rule book to consult. Ooh, I like that, Grassland G. That hits the nail on the head. That's a really good point. Parenting via religion is safer because you're not having to do guesswork or follow your intuition or your instincts. You just consult something. That's not to say, of course, that it's necessarily lazy to raise them with religion, but yeah, having that backup. I think that's one of the reasons why so many people get drawn into just calling themselves a particular religion, especially when it comes to Abrahamic faiths. If the majority of the country believes in this one thing and you just say, yeah, I do too, without ever practicing or digging deep into it, it's easier. That everyone in society does it. You don't have to ask big questions because we already have the answers from the Bible or whatever, right? It's already answered for us. I think that might be too. It makes me wonder. I wonder if that's why so many pagans argue over the proper way to practice. Like, what's the real way to practice and what's moral with magic and mysticism, right? Another thing that made me think of this topic, and I don't know if you've seen this. If you haven't seen it, I highly encourage you to check it out. So there is a very famous witch who called himself the King of the Witches, Alex Sanders. Alex Sanders is known for creating what's known as Alexandrian Wicca. So if you've ever heard of Alexandrian Wicca, it comes from Alex Sanders. Now, I used to think that Alex Sanders was actually a student and initiated by Gerald Gardner. Apparently, that's not the case. They did correspond, but Alex Sanders makes the claim, and this is in a video that you can see here on YouTube. He makes the claim that he was initiated by his grandmother. So it was a family tradition for him. And apparently she cut his scrotum as part of his initiation. Dead serious. You can look up this video. And in this video, I might pull it up if you want to see it real quick. We're going to watch it here together. Clips of it. In this video, he has a girlfriend, and his girlfriend's child, this girl must be like 6 or something. He is wearing a feathered headdress and a G-string, and he's completely nude aside from that. And I'm wondering if he's not completely nude when it's not in front of a camera. but he is practicing with a 6-year-old child, and the fear in that child's face, and I don't know if it's from the cameras or from him. I mean, it could be too many people around and cameras on her that might have made her nervous, but them doing a ritual together and him being like that around a child creeped me out. It was really creepy to see. As open-minded as I can be, it just seemed so wrong. And I get a similar feeling when I see really, really young altar boys in Christian churches. It's the same thing. Having a child that young participating in the ceremonies. Like, if they're teenagers or older, okay, fine. But having like a child participating in these ceremonies, I'm like, why are we doing this? Isn't there like a line? Gothic proclivity. I was more interested in watching Saturday, more cartoons than going to Catholicism class. Then my whole family fell away from Christianity. Now, did they not raise you with religion, or was it kind of there but not there? And is that one of the reasons you had more interest, or were you just one that just didn't drink the Kool-Aid, as they say? And welcome. Thank you for participating in the chat, by the way. All comments are welcome. Which, by the way, and I don't say this enough, and I want to say it again, everyone is welcome to my chats and are welcome to their opinion. So if you're Christian, chime in. I have no problem with you sharing your thoughts. Now, if you start preaching and don't respect different opinions, that's not cool. But yeah, if you want to share your thoughts and say, you know, hey, you completely believe in what you believe in and you think children should be raised in this way because it's going to save their immortal souls, go ahead, share your thoughts. I don't mind. Go for it. If you're an atheist, shouldn't raise them with anything. Go for it. Share your thoughts, including comments after. I don't think there can be a real way to practice because we don't have a time machine. Stone Age people did things different from Bronze and Iron Age people. Completely agree with you. The Dusty Dud, that was actually one of the things that I wanted to cover as one of the 4 topics I posted in the community tab for today's discussion, was going to be culture versus religion. And I want to dig into in a future live. Now, next live is going to be around shielding and warding because that got the second most votes. But I wouldn't want to talk about, since there was some votes for it, and I'm definitely interested in discussing it further, how basically, in order to learn how to practice, you have to come from something, you have to get inspired by something, and cultural traditions are passed down, and a lot of cultural traditions are not Christian or pagan or something else. They are cultural. People keep doing it even if they add different names onto it. So I would like to dig into that further in a future live, but that's a good point. Just lost internet along the ways. Oh, no worries. Welcome back. Plus, belief always changes and adapts over time. Yes, completely agree, Dusty Dud. Absolutely. I agree with you there. All right. Thoughts before I pull this up? Anyone want to see Alex Sanders? Heck yeah, Blaze. That would be fun live. Cool. Let me find if I can find the one I'm looking for. Actually, here, I've got links saved. I got hyperlinks. Let me pull up my hyperlinks really quick. And this is from someone else's YouTube channel, so I'm going to call them out, give them credit, and we're only going to play a clip of it. So if you want to check out the whole thing, go to their YouTube channel and check them out. I got a whole list of videos. So this is Alex Sanders' ritual. Alex Maxine Sanders. This is the one where he's forcing a torch into a woman's mouth. That's not the one I wanted to refer to. The Power of the Witch. Alexander. I want to find the very next one. Alexander interview talks about... Yeah. So this is the one I want. This is the one I'm looking for here. All right. So let me pop this up a little bit. Let me switch over to here. Let's get this a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on. If I do it this way. Yeah, I can do it this way so we can see it a little bit better. All right, so this one is from What Witches Do. That is the YouTube channel. Let me grab the link. So this is What Witches Do is the YouTuber. And hopefully the sound picks up okay and doesn't play too much. So it's a 31-minute video. This is Alexander's. So this is the guy who created Alexandrian Wicca. So this is where we're talking about Gardner. I want to get here where he's talking about being initiated by his grandma.
Hastings. Here in a TV archive interview, he talks about his initiation by his grandmother.
This is what I was talking about.
Blindfolded me, scourged me, you say whipping. My ceremony was a bit different because I came from a bloodline of witches.
So he just said there that they blindfolded him and scourged him, they whipped him. And his initiation was different because he came from a bloodline of witches.
The little sickle knife, she drew blood from my scrotum.
It's hard to make out what he's saying there. Something about a little sickle, something they drew blood from my scrotum.
So I was blooded because I'm the blood.
So he was bloodied because he's the blood.
And all my children are the blood. I've got 10 of them.
And
all of his children are the blood, and he has 10 of them.
At the age of 7, what effect did it have on you?
Very little. It was just something that was frightening. Well, you can imagine what a little boy must be like with the unknown. It's like going to church. I was as much in awe of my grandmother as I was of the priest.
He's not naked here. He's wearing a loincloth. I know it looks. Here's the ritual where they're showing. So he said he was initiated at 7 years old. Seeing videos like this, and here I'll give a direct link to the actual video itself so you can check it out. Seeing videos like this, I think it's important. And that's why I save links to them to reference later. Because when you're talking about stuff, you're listening to what Alex Sanders is saying here. Yes, I'm throwing in my commentary. Yes, I'm coming up with assumptions and opinions. But watching this yourself, watching videos like this where you hear the people talking and then making up your mind, I think is important. Anyway, this is him doing a ritual.
Alex has been a major figure in the revival of witchcraft, and in 1962 was elected...
So I'm going to fast forward it a little bit.
Isn't it?
So this is the child of his girlfriend or something, that a girl he's dating. It's not his biological daughter. And this is basically where he's asking her to do a ritual with him live. This creeps me out. And maybe you have a different opinion of it, but this is the reason I'm showing this is it's relevant to what we're discussing right now. He was raised as a witch at the age of 7 years old is what he's claiming. We don't know. We have to take his word for it, right? There's no proof. So maybe he was. He's claiming his grandmother was a witch, his mother was a witch, now he's a witch because 7 years old he was initiated.
Stepdaughter.
Wasn't she a little bit frightened?
Are you frightened of me? We could do rituals for them, couldn't we? Shall we do a little? Shall we? You know, the tree would like to do it with me. Put the music back on, Nicky, just for 1 minute.
Yeah. The look on her face there. Again, maybe it's because they're in front of a...
Such a young child.
And because you're part of my family. And why should I involve her with the church, if not with my own church?
But some people might think it a little dangerous that a 6-year-old was involved in that.
I care less what other people think. Like I don't bother about other people making their children Christians.
So, yeah, he's bringing up that point there. So he's raising his stepdaughter. I thought it was just his girlfriend's daughter. I'm sorry. So, but was his girlfriend's daughter. I guess they got married. So his stepdaughter. To me, she looks scared. Now, is she scared because of the whole witchcraft period? Is she scared because of the TV cameras? But to me, that child seemed very uncomfortable, and that creeped me out to see that. I don't know. Maybe it's because of how I was raised, but being that unclothed with children doesn't seem appropriate. And maybe that's my upbringing. But it's creepy to me. And then he brings up the argument, which again applies to this conversation that we're having here. He brings up the argument that, well, why wouldn't I raise her in my belief? She's my family. You know, it's this is like no different than a church Christian raising a child. And that's the thing. I kind of have the same problem with Christian children practicing in church rituals. Like rituals for children, it just, I don't know. To me, I have this mindset of the innocence of a child and that it shouldn't be corrupted. And I feel like putting any religious beliefs, forcing it on them if they're uncomfortable like that, it's just wrong to me. To me, at least. Like I said, I'm not trying to tell you how to raise your children. But I see stuff like this and I think about that conversation and I think maybe we should rethink things. Like if she was older, teenager at least, and she was comfortable with it and she wanted to participate, that's different than, I don't know how young she was, but that was a very young child. So, and I know there's going to be people who see that and see nothing wrong with that. And there's also going to be people who say it's completely wrong, but do the same thing with their child in their religion, right? Whether they're Hindu or Buddhist or Catholic or Protestant, Jewish, they'll do ritual with their children and it's okay. But they'll see ritual like this, and because it's not something they're comfortable with, they're not okay with it. Yeah, it looks kind of sus. I wouldn't let that guy watch my dog. But that's Alex Sanders. That's literally the guy who created Alexandrian Wicca. Like, people read these books and they follow the teachings and doctrines. That's the person who created your path. I mean, Scott Cunningham, not Scott Cunningham. I'm sorry. I like Scott Cunningham, actually. That's conversation for another day. Buckland, Raymond Buckland. If you have not seen the Big Blue Book of Witchcraft before, there is a ritual in there. Pretty sure I save links. Like I said, I save hyperlinks for everything. I used to own it. Well, I'm sorry. My wife used to own it. She wanted to get rid of it because she just wasn't into that kind of stuff. She had researched it when she was younger. She had the book. We got rid of it. And now I wish I would have kept it because I like to reference things. So here it is, Big Blue Book of Witchcraft. That's what we jokingly called it, but it was Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft is what it's called. If you've heard of it, you've heard of it. If you haven't, you haven't. There is an initiation ritual in here. And in this Buckland's Book of Witchcraft, for the initiation, I have to find out where it's at again. You basically are supposed to be blindfolded and have your robe open, and you're supposed to have your genitals anointed by someone of the opposite gender, and then have you kissed on the mouth. You're also supposed to be blindfolded and tied up. And again, in the mystery crafts, in the arts, right, in the craft, in witchcraft, it is common to do stuff that seems very barbaric and arcane to normal society. That's just the reality of the situation. I don't remember where the initiation ceremony is. So it's not unheard of to have something that's like, oh, well, of course. I thought there was a table of contents in the beginning. I wanted to find out, like, jump to the page by looking through the table of contents. And now I feel like I'm overlooking it. It's got to be one of these. Yeah, okay. I did overlook it. I'm sorry. But my point is, being nude within witchcraft. We live in a society where we think of being clothed and that the body and nudity is shameful and wrong and you should hide from it. But the most natural state that you can be in is nude. So for witches to practice nude actually does make sense. We're talking about embracing nature and your natural way of being. However, it again reflects the fact that I think adults doing that is different than children. I don't think children should be exposed to that, especially because of our society and how we've changed as a culture. Culturally speaking, it's inappropriate to be running around naked with children. It's just not acceptable by our society standards. But that's only one way of practicing, right? That's not every bit of paganism out there. Just because you see this and Sanders was covered. I mean, he wasn't completely naked, so maybe he is always covered. I don't know if he's completely nude. I know Gerald Gardner was a nudist. There's interviews and stuff about him talking about that. What do we see initiation here on the page? History, beliefs, tools and clothing, rites of passage. I think it's rites of passage. So I think I want to go to page 41. That's 27. Coven members, initiation ritual. There we go. Yeah. Wait, was that it? Coven initiation. There you go. Right here on the right-hand side. And it actually has like this whole section over here. It talks about it and anointing the person's body and stuff. And again, it's like, I understand. Here we go. Yeah. It's supposed to be bound and blindfolded over here on the left-hand page. Method for binding an initiate. And again, it's like there's symbology here that makes sense from a polytheistic standpoint for an adult. But this is not something the average person would be okay with. And I would argue that even the average pagan today would not be comfortable doing this. Not all, but I bet you most of them would not be comfortable doing it. Anyway, but yeah, this is straight up in this book that talks about how to do this. The blindfoldedness, you know, taking away your visual eyes that are deceiving you with the illusions of reality in the world and going into darkness to fully experience with your other senses. Being tied up, you are now vulnerable and are exposed to a group that you're supposed to be treating like family. There are symbologies in here. And it's just... Do you see what I'm getting at here when I'm starting to question some things that people might not necessarily be comfortable with? And now I'm getting too far off of track. My biggest point is a 7-year-old initiation. I don't know what his initiation consisted of, but he literally had his scrotum cut. Like, a 7-year-old child had a family member make his scrotum bleed with some sort of knife or something. I can't help but say wrong. I don't know. I can't help it. That's my mindset. There are family nudist resorts. That's true. That is true. And I mean, what you're saying there, Jay, it does come to the question of what the parents believe is right. I think the reason Alexander's bothers me the most is I have no idea if that child was raised from a young age upward or if she got introduced into this stuff because her mom married this guy. And the fact that child seems so uncomfortable. Like, she was straight up shutting down. She was uncomfortable. But I don't know. Is she uncomfortable because of him? Or is she uncomfortable because of the cameras? I think there's something in the way he spoke with her, though, and the tone in his voice, that's what made me uncomfortable and creeped out. The look on her face and the way he spoke to her, that's what made me uncomfortable the most. Hey, Louie, how's it going, man? Let's not discuss circumcisions. Right, seriously, why is that okay? Like, straight up, that is genital mutilation. And that is on a newborn. Like, what the... Our society thinks that's acceptable and okay. That's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, right? But it's also a good point. That's a good parallel to draw. You're talking about a newborn baby and mutilation of its reproductive area and someone being initiated at the age of 7 by their grandma. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting conversation for sure. There are family nudist resorts. Is it wrong for the family to take their kids to those? That's a great question. Jay, I like that question. And if anyone has opinions on it, is it wrong? If there are nudist family resorts, should people not take their children there if it's for the whole family? Because I think the thing to remember in those situations with nudists, it's not sexualized like a lot of people try to do. It is literally, it's just who you are. Whether you're wearing clothes or not, you're a person. So not having clothes on, you're just a person. You're just doing your thing, right? I think we see the same thing in Western media. It's okay to show violent gore, blood, but as soon as there's anything with nudity, nope, they flip out over it. Like I think it might be because of a cultural thing that it seems inappropriate. But that brings up the question, what do you think? What is inappropriate? I don't have an answer for you because each person has to make their own decision. That's a good topic to bring up, Jay. Mel R. It gave off a weird vibe. It did. It did. That video certainly did. Like, if you take it outside the context and go to Jay's question and think about nudist resorts with whole families and stuff like that, if you think about that from a different perspective, your feelings and opinions might be different than watching that video and giving an opinion on that video. How's it going? It's going pretty good. My frames are dropping, so if the live is stuttering, I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm having issues with I've been having issues with my internet. Okay, it looks like it's stabilizing. So it looked like it stuttered out there for a second. Sorry about that. I'm at work, sadly. I need to go. I'm glad to hear this. I'll catch it later. Cool, Mel R. Thank you so much for hanging out and participating. You have a great day. As a student of traditional Wicca, I understand the purposes of things within. Do I agree that kids are to be part of a certain ritual? No. Families that belong to covens should have a separate space. I agree. Completely agree with you, Jay. And like I said, I see the symbology. I see what they're doing. When I show that ritual book there in Buckland's initiation, I understand the symbology behind it. But I bring it up for two reasons in this video. One, I don't think they should do that to a child. I just don't. I do feel like that initiation ceremony is not appropriate for a child. That's just how I personally feel about it. Does that mean everyone has to agree with me? No. If they disagree, are they wrong? No. But I personally feel that that is a ritual that a child should not go through. Adult. That's my opinion, an adult. As far as, at the very least, like, I don't know if some of these topics get really weird, especially on YouTube because of the weird rules and stuff. Apparently you can't even have an opinion anymore. But anyway, you're welcome to your opinion. I at least want you to think about it. I see all the symbology behind those initiation ceremonies, and they make a lot of sense. Like I was saying, the way that I look at it, the whole blindfolding thing and taking away the illusions of the world and really experiencing the world with your other senses, that makes tons of sense. Is that why they do it? I don't know. That's the way I would make sense out of blindfolding during an initiation. The tying yourself up, again, that dependency and trust on others around you, because it takes away the false sense of control. When you are bound and your hands are tied and stuff, you feel very vulnerable. And it takes away, like if you fall, you can't catch yourself, right? You can't keep people away or anything. Like you are very vulnerable in that situation. And the reality of the situation of life is we are vulnerable and we forget that. We get stuck in the illusions. So blindfolding and tying someone out takes away their illusions of self-control and awareness and makes them truly open up to what's truly around them. Makes perfect sense. And again, we are who we are. We are not our clothes or our haircuts. We exist. And in many spiritual situations, we are beyond our physical form. We are something more. And the physical body is just a vessel that we ride in for this lifetime. And taking away clothes and stuff, those are false securities. So it does make sense for the ritual. Doesn't change the fact that I don't think a child should participate in a ritual like that. And I also brought it up for the fact, even though it's not part of this personal conversation in this particular video, that I think a lot of people that are Wiccans or witches have not gone through an initiation ceremony like that. And I don't think most of them would be comfortable going through a ceremony like that. And I think that separates some people. I know some people who have gone through ceremonies and initiations like that before. And so they've got, but they've embraced everything about their path. They've truly become one with that path. I think that's part of the frustration I get with how freely people use the term witch. You literally have people that have devoted themselves to a group, to a set of practices, to training, to initiated degrees, and have gone through ceremonies like this to be initiated. And to me, that's like earning that title versus somebody just saying, I read a book, I kind of agree with some of this, I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to call myself a witch. I think that's one of the reasons why I get a little finicky about titles myself. Even when it comes to stuff like Obod, at least there's initiation ceremonies in there. I mean, the initiation into the Obod, the Bardic grade, the first Bardic grade. You can do a solo ritual, as you well know, but you can also do a group ritual with people. And I don't think most people have done initiation rituals like that. And that, it marks something. But if you're not part of a coven, a group, or a grove, what are you initiating yourself into? The self-initiation thing, like Scott Cunningham introduced a lot of the self-initiation stuff. Oh, okay. He's one of many who have introduced the self-initiation stuff. So there are ways of doing it differently. And I think it has changed with the times. And maybe that's the problem, how we are today in society versus how society was back then. And maybe there's a difference there. Anyway, I'm getting on a complete side tangent there. But either way, Jay, great point, man. Great point. Dusty Dud. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Blaze. It's going well. I shot you a message about something. Think you'd appreciate it. Cool. Yeah, I saw you message me on Discord, but since I'm doing a live right now, I haven't read your message yet. But I'll check it out, Louis. Blaze, I think the book you looked up was a different book than the one I mentioned. I'm sure it's a good book. The one I was mentioning had a red and white cover written by John Day. I mean, it's possible. It could be different editions or different versions. Did I? Here we go. Right here. So this book, this is Albright William Foxwell, 1891 to 1971. You're saying this is not the book you were referring to, so this is a different one. It's okay, very possible it's different. I assume you mean this one here, this Yahweh one here, this red and white cover down at the bottom. So I guess there's another one that has almost the same title, and I don't know if it's a reprint or not. But thank you for pointing that out. I am messing up my typing skills. Nothing wrong with that. I agree that it's an earned title. Right. Not everybody agrees with that, though, Jay. And that would be a great future live to talk about if you should even call yourself a witch. Is it a title that you have to earn, or is it something you can claim? That's the one. Yeah, it might be out there somewhere. I just grabbed one of the ones from Internet Archive. But good to know that it was a different book that you were talking about. Yeah, there's stuff like Open Library and museum.orgs. Oh, here we go. Okay. So, there is one that's out there as well. So John Day. So this is the one you mean. John Jarek. 2001. Okay. So there's one that has the same title from the 70s, and this one is from 2001, it looks like. So, okay. Completely different book. No worries. But at least now I know the one you were referencing. It's important to find the right one, right? Or jumping or skipping or reloading constantly. That's why. I can see it's spinning on the left here, and it says, YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth video. Which I am mixed on. I would not call myself witch because I feel witch is gender specific. It does not align with my personal beliefs. But to say I am a second degree or third degree, that's earned. Ah, I see. Yeah, I definitely agree with the certain degrees are definitely stuff that is earned. So when you say gender specific, do you think witches specifically refer to females? I'll probably should save this for a future conversation or Discord since it's not the topic for today. But I have a witch versus warlock video that covers a similar topic. Yes, witch is female. Fair. I know there's some differences of opinion when it comes to whether or not men can call themselves witches, and if they don't call themselves witches, what do they call themselves? So, Alex Sanders, for example, called himself a witch, and he was a male. He's not the only one either. It's definitely, as you know, there's many circles where men do call themselves a witch. Magus, for you, oh, interesting. Yeah, I think I remember us having a discussion, something along those lines on Discord. Would love to dig into that more. Like I said, maybe even a future live. That would be a cool topic. There you go. The first video we get to do together where we're discussing things, that would be a great topic. I mean, I know next to nothing about such topics, but I would go with witches for women and wizards, warlock for men. HP reference in there to lighten the mood. Nothing wrong with that. That would work. Yeah, Louis, the main topic today is basically, is it moral to raise your child as a pagan or with religion, period, for that matter? So like raising your child as a Christian, is that the right thing to do? Should children be taught, and please, by all means, share your thoughts because everyone's thoughts are welcome here. Should children be taught to practice a religion at a young age? Should they be initiated or go through confirmation or baptized? Like, should any of this stuff happen? Or should the child be raised to find it themselves? Like, there's a difference between introducing your child to religion and raising them in the religion. So where does that line get drawn? Warlock comes from the Anglo-Saxon word for oathbreaker. Right. Apparently, though, there is also arguments from Old Norse as well as Scottish words that supposedly... what was it? Was it to bend or something weird like that? I'll have to look it up again on etymology, but I cover it in that video. But apparently there has been people who have used the term specifically for male practitioners. It seems like the older and more consistent one is Oathbreaker, though. But I've had people argue till they're blue in the face. No, it's for a male practitioner. I'm like, oh, okay. I personally hate the idea of children being born having to be a part of religion based on what their parents want. I heard Wicca means male witch and Wicca means female witch, but I could be wrong. That's actually correct, Dusty Dud. In Old English, an Anglo-Saxon language, Old English, there are two words which I believe are pronounced witche and witcha. Witcha is the one that you put there, and that is for a male practitioner, and witche is for a female practitioner. And they called it witchcraft was their craft. Now here's the problem, though. We have no record or evidence of how they practiced back then. We do have some healing books that are in Old English that are locked up in museums that we can't access that claim some of the healing rituals were from the witcha. Witcha. But we can't confirm that because I don't know how to get a hold of them or get access to them. In fact, Gerald Gardner used the name Wiccan off of witcha because of the Old English word. Supposedly, witcha evolved into witch. But yes, you are right on that. I think parents should share equal education about all religions, and the child should choose when they feel ready, whether it be 5, 10, 30, or maybe even never. I completely agree with you, Louie, and that's been a common theme in today's live. Most of the people that have shared their opinion, not all, but most of the people who have shared their opinion in this live agree that a child should be raised to allow them to find what they want to find. But many seem to be also okay with raising people or raising their children, who are people, raising their children to at least introduce them to the idea of the religion without indoctrinating them into it. Yeah, correct, Blaze, on the pronunciation. Thank you. Yeah, like I said, I use etymology.com. I'm going to give you references. And that's one thing that you can trust with me. If I don't remember something, I'll tell you. If I do, I will give it to you. And if it's something as simple, sometimes I just reconfirm it by looking it up. And etymology.com reconfirms some of the stuff that I've read in books a long time ago. But if I don't have a reference to share with you, it's like, it's kind of a moot point, right? Well, one random person online kind of remembers at one time he heard something mentioned. That doesn't help. Like almost like superstition. Right. But I was specifically talking about, oh, hold on, I missed something you said. However, it can difference for me personally. I was baptized, but I'm not religious, nor are my parents. It's just more of a social event for some families over here, if that makes sense, like superstition. That does. In fact, that was one of the topics I want to eventually discuss, the difference between cultural traditions and religion and how they are very interwoven. And if you want to look at what they might have done back in the olden days, just look at the modern cultures. Even if they do it with a Catholic name, you'll find old traditions built into there that predate Catholicism. A lot of people make the claim, well, then those are pagan practices. Not really. I mean, when they say pagan, they basically just mean non-Abrahamic religion. But how can you take like 10,000 years of practice and lump that all under pagan, even though most of that stuff has been forgotten since? That, again, future video. I'm sorry. I'm looking forward to that video. The podcast won't be for a while because I'm currently dealing with my dad in hospice. I stepped away. Oh, Jay, I am so sorry to hear that. Oh my goodness. I did not know. Yes, I know. By all means, man. Family comes first. Wow. I'm really sorry to hear that you're going through that. No, by all means, take all the time you need. Like I said, I didn't realize. I'm gonna go with I was culturally baptized, less religious. Yeah, no, you're fine, Louis. I get it. I hear what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense. It does seem like most of the people that are more open to the idea of raising children to experience multitude of religions were either not religiously raised themselves or found different religion later in life. I think the people that were raised with religion and raise their children with religion and don't question it are the individuals that just never stepped away from their religion. Because again, if you were raised and your parents 100% believe this is the only way and the right way, and then you believe that too, you're going to pass that on. And if you do that long enough, that makes sense. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not trying to necessarily jump on Alexander's case, but the vibes in that video gave me heebie-jeebies. I don't know. Not every single person has, because I've also seen individuals like Scott Cunningham in videos. And Scott Cunningham, like, I would have been his friend, dude. I would have hung out with him. When I've seen Scott Cunningham speak in his videos, and yes, there are videos of Scott Cunningham online, he doesn't give me the heebie-jeebies at all. And that's why I'm saying, like, with Alex Sanders, it's mildly different. Here. This is Scott Cunningham. I'm going to once again give you links. So here is a shout out to the YouTube person, Nelson H. Burrowgin. This is the YouTube channel that I'm going to tap into again for this video. And here is the video we will be looking at today. Again, small clip. But this is Scott Cunningham. This is the author of all of those books that a lot of us love.
Essential oils in gift shops and other stores. Your own involvement with your need will draw money to you. Similarly, though a love oil might not attract your ideal mate overnight, it will widen your options, eventually leading you to him or her. Magic can be fun, but it should be done with serious intent. Doing an incense spell, for instance, just for fun, will produce no results. Quality oils, use the ones that feel right to you, that seem to smell the way nature intended. That's most important. $100 an ounce oils are more effective magically because they are true plant oils. But use what you can find, or if you're adventurous, make up a few. You can do this by using a variation on
the main point is, like, you get a sense for the people that are speaking. So there's definitely less of a creepiness with Cunningham, and that's reaffirms enjoying Cunningham's books. Like, again, Cunningham's book, and I have it right here if you want to see it. The first book I ever had, I got when I was like my 13th birthday or 14th birthday. I had a medieval arming sword, which I still have, and I had this spell book that my mom got for me, and his words just resonate. 2 Hour Live. Hold on. I thought you might be interested in that. 2 hour. Hold on. I missed something. The podcast won't be for a while because yeah. Blaze, Dr. Robert Price does 2 hour another lives in the evening on the channel Wise as a Serpent. It's a fun hangout. You can ask anything history. It's not just Bible stuff. He knows a lot. 2 Hour Live. Okay. I thought you might be interested in that. Yeah, I never heard of Dr. Robert Price, but I might check that out. Thank you. As a student of Wicca, I am in the process of creating my own tradition of Wicca. I don't think there's anything wrong as every tradition was created by someone. Right. And I don't see anything wrong with that either. And in fact, a lot of people have done that. Ed Fitch's book, Grimoire Shadows, is like his own tradition, his own version. And it's like the way that I would explain and understand to people when it comes to witchcraft or Wicca, because they're different paths. I'm sorry. Wiccans are witches, but not all witches are Wiccan. I will die on that hill. But I always explain it that each family, each coven had their own tradition. And you see this even in Abrahamic faiths. Each church, they might have some base core beliefs, but they argue over which version of the Bible. They argue over how they should practice, and they have certain saints that are more important than others if they have saints at all. Every group practices differently, and I think the same is true when it comes to Wicca. So yeah, having your own Wiccan tradition for the way you practice with your group, your coven, your friends, your gathering, makes sense to me. And I think that's going to happen, and I think that's pretty common. This is actually one of the longest lives I've done in a while. I've been trying to cut these off after an hour, but I do appreciate everyone hanging out for so long. I hope this was an interesting topic for you, and that you not only learned things, but opened and broadened your mind a bit. I do want to wrap this up, though, because I do not want to stream all day, and I don't think anyone's going to sit through an hour and a half, let alone a longer video. So I do want to cut these off because I do want to have the lives of stuff that people can go back and rewatch. So I'm trying to keep them around an hour. But maybe next Saturday we will continue with another topic, unless people want to revisit this one. I'll try to be active in my community tab. I do have a Discord at the moment of this video, so if you want to check that out, by all means, feel free to join that link. So, sorry I messed that up. I had to squeeze in all in limited characters in chat. Glad to know you understand that shorthand, right? No, you're fine. You can always do multiple messages. I don't think like slow mode's on by too much. Like you can do 100 characters, hit enter, another 100, hit enter. So just do a couple messages in a row if you need to. Dr. Price is a biblical scholar and historian with 2 PhDs, I think. Cool. Yeah, I can appreciate people coming from different paths. And like I said, I'm not religious myself. I've experimented with many different religions, and I've kind of studied many different religions as well. But at the end of the day, my path is my own, and I think none of them have it 100% right. So I'm just trying to figure out my place in the universe. And as I explore these different paths and consider them, I like to bounce ideas off of others and share what I've learned along the way. I mean, that's the whole point of my YouTube channel, is get people thinking and considering. I've spent a lot of time with books that were just people claiming to have the answer, and a lot of them repeat the same information, or I have people have know-it-alls and they condemn others, and it always frustrated me. But I've understood and explored these spiritual paths. A lot of them have very similar answers at the core of them, and a lot of them have wisdom if you just take the time to give them a chance. So just because something is Christian or biblical doesn't mean I won't check it out. So I appreciate you sharing. Don't know if I have time. That's another conversation, but I definitely will check it out. So thank you, Dusty Dud. Thank you one and all for hanging out with the live today. I'm going to end it here, and I will catch you in the next one.